Thank you for an eloquent and expertly prepared defense of freedom in the classroom and other topics. I fear I'm going to be a bit of a more rough speaker in this. I've been very busy demonizing hordes of anonymous progressive faculty members. I've been sidetracked on Orwellian wild goose chases, and you know how it is. You're attempting to suppress academic freedom. There isn't a whole lot of time left to develop a polished rhetoric. But I'm going to do my best with this. First, let me just throw in a few stipulations. Kerry had quite a bit to say about his classroom practice. I'm willing to stipulate that he's a fabulous teacher. I share his love of poetry. I'm sure that there's a great deal that goes on in his classes that I would find completely unobjectionable, although I might not share quite the same tastes he has for particular poems. I'm sorry David Horowitz isn't here. I figure a really strong debate presence against Horowitzian positions has been laid forth, but I'm not David Horowitz, and I'm afraid that part of the attack kind of goes right past me. In 1999, Kerry published a very interesting volume titled Academic Keywords, A Devil's Dictionary for Higher Education. In it, he wrote that academic freedom is, let's get this exactly, the glue that holds the university together, the principle that protects its educational mission. And he observes that from the outset, academic freedom was vested simultaneously in individuals and institutions. He adds that academic freedom is not a fact of nature, but something that has to be put in practice for it to have any meaningful effects. I say, hooray. These are very sound principles, good observations, valid insights. Further in the same book, however, Professor Nelson devotes a chapter to the National Association of Scholars based on his observations at a predecessor to this meeting, the 1997 NAS meeting in New Orleans. It isn't a very gracious portrait. He found that the presiding spirit was one of resentment and that the participants were captive to their anger. One speaker was described as unhinged, another recited platitudes. The members, he said, were old and irrelevant, held together by shared resentment and regret. The younger members run errands for conservative think tanks and get thrown their spare change. NAS was founded by a small group of Jews, but has attracted university wasps, typically failed academics, buzzing about the decaying remains of their careers. NAS exists to assure them that their failure isn't their fault, and so on. Well, at least in 1997, NAS appears to Kerry to be a sad joke, except that now and then, because of money from the Olin Foundation, the late lamented Olin Foundation, it can cause some serious harm, as when NAS activists helped to draft and pass California's Proposition 209. He sighs that his proposal to a dinner companion on that occasion that the NAS should find common ground with him in opposing the increasing corporatization of the university will go unheeded because NAS, in hoc Olin, worships at the altar of capitalism, and, quote, its campaign against political correctness, our campaign, is really aimed at delegitimating higher education to justify reductions in financial support so corporations can step in and fill the void. Well, I have to say this is a portrait of the National Association of Scholars in a funhouse mirror. Some elements are recognizable, but they're elongated here, they're squashed down there, and the whole resembles no living creature. But fair game. It's parody. He's having fun. Maybe that was his 15 seconds. But it's a warning of sorts, too, that behind the mask of affability that we've just heard for the last half hour lies a good deal of malice and a willingness not just to caricature an opponent, but to actively misrepresent his views. So Professor Nelson sees the NAS as taking a scorched earth approach, actually a nice term that appeared in the Devil's Dictionary and again in his speech today, a scorched earth approach towards the university to save the university by destroying it. Academic freedom must be redefined, he writes, as a responsibility to eliminate the intellectually irresponsible, read politically unacceptable faculty members. So this is this Horwitzian idea, presumably, it's attributed to him, he's not here to speak for himself, that we engage in a weeding enterprise to get rid of people we don't like. Quote, the NAS, it is clear, is disenchanted both with academic freedom and faculty self-governance. Are we? Were we in 1997? Well, I wasn't at the conference in New Orleans, but it seems to be unlikely. In any case, I'm not in the least bit disillusioned with academic freedom and faculty self-governance. I think they're great things. To quote one well-known enthusiast, academic freedom is the glue that holds the university together, the principle that protects its educational mission. Now let's talk about Bill Faulkner. Bill Faulkner, a Rhode Island College School of Social Work graduate student, was ordered by Professor James Risnick in the fall of 2004 to write a paper advocating in favor of legislation then pending in the Rhode Island legislature that would have increased cash assistance to low-income families. Faulkner asked for permission to write against Bill 525, and Resnick told him, quote, the college is a perspective school, and we teach that perspective. If you're going to lobby on that bill, you're going to lobby from our perspective, unquote. Faulkner wrote in opposition to the bill anyway and received an F in the course with the explanation written on his paper, quote, regardless of the content, application of theory, and critical analysis, you did not write from a perspective you were required to use in this academic exercise. Therefore, the paper must receive a failing grade. Well, Faulkner had another dealing that semester with Professor Risnick. He objected to the School of Social Work showing the film Fahrenheit 9/11 in classes. He argued that the war on terror was outside the school's expertise. He failed to persuade the school, took his lumps. He then asked if the School of Social Work would sponsor a showing outside class of a rebuttal movie titled Fahrenheit 9/11. Risnick replied to him in writing, quote, as a profession, we do take sides, he added. The School of Social Work is a values-based profession that clearly articulates a socio-political ideology about how the world works and how the world should be. And he added, I revel in my biases. He suggested that anyone who consistently upholds an antithetical view should get out of the profession. Well, if you want to read more about this, Ashley Thorne wrote this up in an article on our website titled, I Revel in My Biases, School of Social Work. The question, it seems to me, is whether Risnick was operating within the world of academic freedom to declare his immunity from any kind of rational inquiry, his revel in my biases approach, his position supported by his school that it was there to advocate a political position and that anyone who disagreed with it should get lost, seems to me pretty plainly a violation of any meaningful sense of academic freedom. The academic freedom of a student was trampled on. But let's, I hope, discuss that some more. Let's see. want to appear in some future edition of the Devil's Dictionary. And I've been worried about how to handle this. Whether Carey is going to find in me that new model of resentment and anger that so impressed him in 1997. I've written a whole book titled A Bee in the Mouth, Anger in America Now, that is a counsel against the excesses of resentment and anger on both the left and right. But I suspect something more is needed to underscore my benignant intentions, my irenic spirit, my fondness for innocent childhood in the midst of such serious discussion. So I was a little bit outside the realm of debate, but I think I need help. So let me introduce my debating partner. Okay. I'm mindful that my task in this portion of the debate is to answer three questions, namely, to paraphrase them, what does academic freedom cover, on what is it based, what are its assumptions, and then ought there to be any external agency or power over academic freedom? With Bill Faulkner in mind, let me venture some answers to this. Academic freedom needs to protect students from bombastic blowhards and self-righteous bullies in the faculty. Academic freedom needs to protect faculty members from tyrannous majorities of colleagues who, in the name of advancing some social good, are ready to trample dissenting opinions. Academic freedom needs to protect faculty and students from deans and college presidents who, overly fond of their own conceits and often too willing to detour around the vigorous debate that might exist in the faculty, simply impose their ideas without having them vetted. Academic freedom needs to protect itself against its misappropriation as a mask for anti-intellectual dogmas. What else does academic freedom cover? It covers the pursuit of truth by rigorous means. Well-formed scholarly opinion, based on that pursuit of truth, is what academic freedom is all about. Speaking with authority on matters that are not only open to investigation, but have in fact been investigated, seems to me to be the essence of what we're looking for in the exercise of academic freedom. That is, we want that kind of knowledge that has the status of a scrupulous account of the world, including conflicting opinions, lacuna, the things we don't know, the gaps, those areas of continuing uncertainty which account for perhaps most of what we deal with, at least in the social sciences and humanities, and a fair amount of the natural sciences as well. There are things we just don't know. And to take, in the name of academic freedom, the occasion to promulgate your knowledge as certain, or to put it forth in such a fashion as to mislead your students into thinking it's certain, seems to me to be almost the definitional abuse of academic freedom. So what does academic freedom not cover? I've said a little bit about it. It doesn't cover mere opinion. It doesn't cover advocacy dressed up as scholarship. It doesn't cover ideology of the sort that short-circuits doubts, skepticism, countervailing evidence, and fair questions. It doesn't cover thuggery. It doesn't cover the implied use of force or sanctions aimed at punishing dissent. And then there's a long list of things that we all know it doesn't cover. It doesn't cover fraud, harassment. It doesn't cover plagiarism. It doesn't cover all those ways in which our fallen human nature sometimes leads us to take advantage of other people. Now, I doubt there'd be much disagreement about that, but as soon as you recognize that academic freedom doesn't cover something like plagiarism, you've put it into the world where you realize that academic freedom is some kind of social contract. It's not an abstract right, and I think Carey got that right in the opening pages of his 1998 book. Now, I'm well aware that academic freedom poses as a doctrine, much of the time, at least in the AAUP's version, a doctrine of how to protect the campus faculty members from pressures outside the university. This is academic freedom as a wall, a shield that stops those ignorant mobs of uneducated people in the legislature and from stepping in and doing damage to the purity of our inquiry. Those threats out there do exist. They're not imaginary, but they're nothing like they were in 1915 when the AAUP formed and started to create a clear attack on the then great pressures of academic freedom. Today, surely the greatest threats to academic freedom are not coming from society at large or ignorant boards of trustees or legislators or even Fox News. They're coming from within inside the university. There's no principle in the concept of academic freedom that says the threat has to be from outside the university. In fact, although John Dewey and Arthur Lovejoy might not have imagined in 1915 that the threat would eventually come from a mobocracy of faculty members intent on pressing their political creeds on their fellow faculty members, that's generally where we've ended up. Now, I think in the interest of time, I'm not going to try a thorough refutation of all of Carey's points about this. There's a sort of appeal to sweet reason that he's offered to this audience that all that stuff NAS has been conjuring up, you know they're just a bunch of blowhards. I would suspect that at least 90% of the people in this room have experienced what we're talking about. You're probably here because you've run into the walls of intolerance, the willingness not to hire, the readiness to sanction in all sorts of formal and informal ways those who step out of line on campus. So I'll just ask you to consult your conscience about this. Is the NAS picture of the world that askew? If it is, I guess we're in the midst of a giant shared folly here, and I'm not going to try to escape that shared folly, but I don't think it's folly at all. I have spent 3 decades in higher education as a faculty member, as an administrator. Many of you here have spent at least that long and can consult your own experience as to what really happens on campus. So I'm just going to, there's probably a good Latin name that Professor Hansen could have offered me here for whatever debating technique this is, but I'm simply going to leave it to you to refute for yourselves that particular claim. Now, let me see if I can turn this to a specific question that Professor Nelson can answer. He was worried about the great anonymity of our attack on left-wing faculty members in general, on women's studies departments as the bogey woman of higher education. Individuality is being lost. Well, not so. I'm not here to talk about generalized categories. I'm here to talk about Bill Faulkner and Professor Risnick. Professor Nelson, do you think Bill Faulkner was well treated by Professor Risnick? Is Risnick exercising academic freedom appropriate to his position to declare that he will punish Faulkner because Risnick likes to revel in his biases? Is the Rhode Island College School of Social Work properly exercising its academic freedom to stand behind Risnick's actions? Okay. The next question we're asked to address in this debate is on what is academic freedom based? And the question itself was phrased in a somewhat convoluted way, but I take it that the essence of this is that when in September 11th, it's an easy date to remember, 2007, the AAUP issued its report, Freedom in the Classroom. The NAS responded very quickly with a interlineary reply. That is, we took the report and replied to it sentence by sentence, some cases word by word, and posted that up on our own website. Inside Higher Education then ran a column by me linked to the interlineary refutation of the AAUP report. I'm not going to assume that all of you, or in fact more than a handful of you, have paid attention to that exchange, which was now well over a year ago. But you've had a depiction of it in Carrie's remarks, and that requires, I think, some kind of response here. The report begins with very solid declarations that there's been a lot of fuss and noise about faculty members indoctrinating their students on campus. Says the AAUP, not so, doesn't happen. Maybe here and there, somewhere, there's a crazy professor who tries to do it, but truly this is all an illusion. Where does it come from? It's a scare sought by organizations like the NAS, like ACTA, some others, who are trying to whip up a kind of public hysteria, who are to get people focused on coming down hard on the university. So freedom in the classroom is, first of all, a denial. There is no problem. And then, in addition, well, there is a kind of problem. The problem consists of these scaremongers who are trying to terrorize the public into thinking there's some big problem. And here, we are here with the AAUP to show you that this is all just phony. There isn't anything out there at all. It does make reference, interestingly, to one of the things that Vicki Krause was referring to, the Citizens for a Better North Carolina, who had objected to the use of Barbara Ehrenreich's book Nickel and Dimed as a required reading for incoming students at the University of North Carolina. So there's an extended defense of the use of that book. And we have some comments there that say, well, you know, there might be a problem here after all. Why is it that the only thing that you want your students to read in common at the University of North Carolina is this book by this one socialist? Maybe it's a good book, but nothing else at North Carolina's system requires any other single text in the whole world to be read in common except Barbara Ehrenreich's book for that semester. We thought that was at least a plausible reason why the Citizens for a Better North Carolina might have some objections to it. But on the whole, what this particular debate about is, does indoctrination occur in the classroom? Well, I don't really love the word indoctrination. It rather implies a kind of regimented approach in which students are going to be forced to a particular set of conclusions on particular matters. And although I agree that it does happen now and then, what we're really talking about in our answer to the AAUP is something more like a climate of opinion that is created on campus, which militates against the presentation of dissenting views of any sort. But again, since this already exists in the public record in a rather full form with opinions back and forth, I think I'd rather let it sit there. But this is what I want to draw out of it. The position that the AAUP initially took in it, and which it now has backed off by at least a few microns, is the notion that it is up to the individual academic discipline to determine what is going to stand as a valid statement. The initial report said the truth. So it was disciplines define the truth. The AAUP, in doing that, takes a stand, I think, pretty consistent with some of the things that Carrie was saying a few minutes ago, in that it's a willingness to look upon the category truth with scare quotes around it. Let's see if I can pick up a few of these phrases. I was writing them down in a hurry. All knowledge is culturally constructed, he said. That's a position that he holds to. Well, I'm an anthropologist. Culture is a kind of key word in my discipline. So I want to think about that a bit. Well, first of all, NAS is accused of being ignorant and acting in bad faith and being woefully behind the times in matters like whether women's studies is still centered on a principle that patriarchy is universal. Well, let me kindly suggest, Carrie, the notion of culture in anthropology went out of active use among rigorous anthropologists maybe a quarter century ago. And to say something is culturally constructed is to take an obsolete piece of verbiage from the history of anthropology and elevate it to an epistemological principle. I think you're woefully behind the times. I regret to say it, but I think you're ignorant on this particular point. The matter is, if you're going to say something is culturally constructed, you darn well better have a good, compelling definition of what culture is. The notion of cultural construction, I readily admit, is the common intellectual currency of the academic left. It's an easy way to get out of being held to rigorous standards of demonstration, of analysis, of evidence, of putting propositions to the test of whether they can stand up in open debate with those who think differently. Now, another fallacy creeps into this, not just ignorance of what's happened in anthropology, but there's the fallacy of the excluded middle. Every time you brought up the cultural construction of knowledge, you posed it as the only alternative to a view of absolute knowledge, transcendental knowledge. We either have pure, perfect certainty in what we know about the world, or we are awash in the oceanic sense that, hey, anything goes. It's culturally constructed. My culture changed today. I think the opposite of what I did yesterday. No, there's a big middle ground there in which the search for truth goes on without any certainty as to exactly where it leads. And there's large branches of American philosophy, think of James, Peirce, pragmatists, who deal with that deep uncertainty. So, in any case, I would rather see this debate on the foundations of academic freedom go in the direction of where do we find the foundations for knowledge. In 1915, when the AAUP put itself in business by putting forth its statement of principles, it found the center of gravity in that argument in science. Now, the committee of 15 people that drew up that report had only one scientist on it. The rest were social scientists and humanities professors. So you can't sort of put them in the position of, oh, they were gaga over their own discipline. No, they took science to be sort of the gold standard of the search for truth, recognizing that it wasn't the only standard. I think, now I'm running out of time, so I'm just going to telescope the last part of this. The third question is whether the university should be subject in some form to the authority of trustees or outside agencies, let's call them, people other than the faculty members as part of the governance of the university, and having a fair say as to when they think academic freedom has been abused. And on this matter, I really think the best I could do is quote what the AAUP itself said about that matter in its founding documents. A few very brief passages. In their extramural utterances, it is obvious that academic teachers are under a particular obligation to avoid hasty or unverified or exaggerated statements and to refrain from intemperate or sensational modes of expression. But subject to these restraints It is not, in this committee's opinion, desirable that scholars should be debarred from giving expression to their judgments. It is, as it will be seen, in no sense the contention of this committee that academic freedom implies that individual teachers should be exempt from all restraints as to the matter or manner of their utterances, either within or without the university. Such restraints are necessary should, in the main, your committee holds be self-imposed or enforced by public opinion of the profession. But there may undoubtedly arise occasional cases in which aberrations of individuals may be required to be checked by definite disciplinary action. It goes on to endorse the actions of trustees, legislators, and the general public in enforcing academic freedom. I can think of sort of no better position to take for the National Association of Scholars than to pick up the discarded mantle of the AAUP in 1915. It was a magnificent statement. We endorse it. We like the AAUP, at least as it was in 1915.